Welcome to the team training for Oklahoma Housing Needs Assessment. This lesson is going to discuss building geodatabases in ArcGIS, specifically in ArcCatalog. So this is part of our prototype model flowchart. It's part of the lessons covering the GIS software, and in particular here, data processing. And I think if you watch the GIS basics video, this is a review, but basically GIS is a database system, and it is like all databases, it is based on tables of data, tables like this one here, right, that has attributes or fields of data and tuples or records of data. And this holds true for the attribute tables as well as the shapefile geographic files too. So the data to draw a polygon, for instance, is also stored in a table similar to this. Now, in ArcGIS, these tables are called feature classes. And we're going to talk about constructing a geodatabase, which is a way to collect all your data, keep it in one place, which is very handy, right? But it also allows you to bring in different shape files, CAD files, raster coverages, different types, and save them all in the geodatabase, and to make sure that they're all compatible with ArcGIS. And we've already seen how you can link these together. Sorry, I skipped the slide here, into relational database, right, where the different tables are joined and related to one another. If you're not familiar with this, go back and watch the joining and relating lesson, because that's where we covered that. But when we did that, we were dealing with feature classes that were already made for us. And so this video is really kind of talking about how to create a geodatabase from scratch. Okay, so let me stop my share here and switch over to ArcMap. And I can find it here. Got too many windows open, right? Is okay. All right, so I'm in ArcMap, and I just have a blank window open right now. So there's nothing really to see and no layers here. And we're going to be doing most of the work in this lesson in ArcCatalog, actually. This is where you kind of manage your data. But we'll keep ArcMap open here so I can show you what happens, with the data after we process it. So one quick note here, when we go into the catalog, right, we're going to go into chapter 14 of GTK ArcGIS, and it has a bunch of data here, and you can see that my data is another folder, but there's nothing in that. We're going to work in my data. Now, you can store these databases any place you like, right? But I'm just going to put it here to keep it simple, because a lot of our data here is already in place. Okay, so with that, I'm going to get started by creating a geodatabase. And this is really a simple process. So I right-click on my data and I say, go down to new here. And here's where you can make new databases. Now, I want to explain here, there's several possibilities that are possible here, okay? There's a file geodatabase, and this is the native geodatabase of ArcGIS, and it's based on IBM DBase technology. And that's the one we're going to use here. But I want to point out that you can make a personal geodatabase, and a personal geodatabase is based on Microsoft Access technology. So it saves it in a different way. But if you were wanting to bring this database or tables of this directly into Access, it's probably the one that you want to work with. For our purposes, we're going to stick with the file geodatabase. And then we've got these two down here: database connection, ArcGIS server connection. And ArcGIS has the capacity to build multi-user geodatabases. And these are, suitable when you want simultaneous editing with different users working on it. And it also allows you to use Oracle or IBM DBase 2 or SQL or, a lot of different things. And so I think we may actually want to use this when we are building our system for this project. Now, unfortunately, I don't have access to ArcGIS Enterprise right now, so I can't show you this, but let me just kind of reassure you that it looks and acts pretty much the same. There's some extra features like security, or you have to log in and that sort of thing. But don't be intimidated by it. And if we get this set up and we want to do an enterprise geodatabase, we can explore that. All right, so I shut that down. So this time, let's just do a new file geodatabase. And there you go. And you can see it just put it in there. And if you right click on it and hit rename, I'm going to call this city data. And let me tell you, with databases, it's very good practice to not use names for the database or for the different tables of data. Don't use spaces or special characters. In my experience, databases are very finicky about names of things, and they're also very difficult to change once you have things set up, and especially when they're full of data, right? It's not like you just go into an Excel file and change the name of a field or something. There's a lot more rules based than something like that. So that's just a warning. Again, nothing to be too intimidated about. Now, so we've got our geodatabase. So there you go. I mean, that's about that simple. It's about a 30-second lesson, right? But we don't have anything in it, right? It's just a shell. So there are various ways to populate a geodatabase. So the easiest way, and the first way we would do this, is to import data. So we're going to import this data here from the exercise 14A data here. And even if you have shape files and things already available, it's a good idea to put them in the geodatabase and keep everything together. And when you go down here to new, that's for making a new feature class, and then import, right? So we're going to import a single feature class first. And you get this, it looks a lot like Arc Toolbox, right? And so the input features, and we gotta go to our folder connections here, and getting to know ArcGIS, chapter 14, right? And we're going to add this parcels shapefile here. And this actually looks like it's a CAD file, and I think it is. So if I open it, yeah. And so, when you get a CAD file, so it's actually made up of multiple components that were created in the CAD system. But we just want the polygons themselves. I hit add. And it's putting it in my city data geodatabase. So it's very important to always check the path to make sure it's putting it where you want it. And then you can give it a name. And in this case, I'm just going to call it parcels. And there's some optional things here, but we don't have to do an SQL query or anything. We're just going to bring it in like it is, see what we get. Okay. Now you say, well, what happened? I don't see anything. Well, there it is, right? Okay. So when we did it, it actually brought the parcel layer into ArcMap as well. But if we go over to ArcCatalog, you can see now there's a little plus sign next to city data. And if I hit the little plus sign there, you can see there's a parcel layer. Okay. And so the parcel layer, in this case, just shows us, I'll just go over here, that it's a bunch, it's a cadastral map essentially, right? A bunch of parcels. You can see the right-of-ways are missing from the streets, but and if I open up the attribute table, you can see we have the area and the perimeter, area in acres, the parcel number, and this is very similar to the kind of thing you might get from a county assessor or city, office. And this example is actually one that we're talking about water infrastructure, which is very important for development and housing development. So anyway, that's how you populate a feature class. And then I'm going to go back to my city data geodatabase, right click on it again, and this time we're going to import multiple feature classes. And you can see you can also bring in tables and raster data sets. Okay. And here we go. We're going to input and hit my little, and then I'm going to have to go up here. Okay. I want these fire hydrant shapefile and the water valve shapefile. These are both points. And you can just hold down shift and select them both and do them both at the same time. And it puts them in the input features box here. And you can see, if we wanted to add more or wanted to delete one or change the order, you can scroll through these. And then the output geodatabase, again, city data. And in this case, it's not giving us the option to change the name. It's just adding these with the names that they have. However, you could go in after they're created and change their names, right? So if you wanted something different, let's just hit OK and see what happens here. And you can see here it's processing down at the bottom, and when it's done, it gives me a little green check mark. You can open this up if you want to read it all, right? That's very handy if it didn't work properly. You could see what kind of error was going on. All right. Now we go back over to catalog. We hit the little plus sign, and now you can see we got 3 features here. We got parcels, and now we got fire hydrants and water valves. I'm going to bring those over, and I'm going to drag the parcels underneath there. And you can see these are both point files. I can turn off the fire hydrants. There's the water valves, and there's the fire hydrants, right? Okay, so that's how you would create a feature class if from one that already exists. And this might be a shapefile, it might be a CAD file, right? But I mean, you already have data and you want to bring it into your geodatabase. And as I said, it's probably most common for us to be working with data that has already been created by someone else. But we can also create our own feature classes, okay? And so the way you do that is we're going to go back here. We're going to right click on city data. And we're going to say we want a new. Well, what do we want? Well, you can do a feature data set, a feature class, table, and a whole bunch of raster stuff. And they all kind of work the same way. You're just going to click on one. So I'm going to click on feature class here. And it brings in a dialog box that's pretty simple. And so the name of things, right? I think in this case, we'll call it water lines. And you can put in an alias if you want. I'm just going to leave it blank on this one. The default is polygon features, and we want to do water lines, so we pick line features. You can also choose to store route data or 3D data, which doesn't apply here, but you could if you wanted to check those. Next, you hit the next button, and it takes you over here where you say, okay, what coordinate system do you want to use? Now, if you watch the map projection lesson. This looks very familiar to us. But one of the things we didn't do in that lesson is maybe we just want to use a coordinate system that's already in the geodatabase. And so for that, we go over here to this little globe with the drop-down arrow, and we say, hey, we want to import a coordinate system. And what we do is just navigate over here to our geodatabase. Get up here, my data, city data, and then we want to use the parcel map projection, which in this case happens to be a state, right? And it's Kansas, actually. It's up by Riley, Kansas. And it's a state plane, Kansas, North Phipps. And so this is a system that, you know, basically lets you project data onto a relatively orthogonal plane of the state. So that all looks good. So we'll just hit next here. It asks for an XY tolerance, and I always have just accepted the default on this. I'm not even really sure if I did change it, like what would happen. So just say next. And same with the configuration here. Now, what this is going to show you is that in the feature class, you can add fields. You always have the object ID, right? So any object that is added to this feature class will be given an object ID. And then we always have the shape, which is the geometry, which in this case will be lines, right? And so you always have those. Those are defaults. And you can add more if you want, and I'll show you in a minute how we can go back and add them later on, but let's just go finish here. And very quickly, you can see, now ArcCatalog just keeps going away on me. There it goes. It added a water lines layer. It also added it to my map. If I open the attribute table, you're going to see there's nothing in it, right? It has those default files, but I mean fields, but it does not have any records yet because we haven't added anything, okay? And, you know, in the next lesson, we're going to talk about creating features, you know, but in this one, we're just talking about creating the classes, and you need to create the classes first before you can create the features. All right, so the last thing that we want to do here is I want to talk about how to create fields and domains. So in the waterlines feature class that we just made, I want you to right click that and hit properties, and there we go. Okay, so now, you know, I basically and there's a bunch of tabs, right? You can do all sorts of things, but I'm in the fields, and you know, I want to add some fields to the water lines. Okay, so like the first one is, you know, I'm gonna populate this feature class with basically where the water lines are and how all these valves and things are connected. And so I'm going to put in install underscore date, right? So one of the fields is the date that the water line was installed. Notice how I didn't use a blank here. I put an underscore in. Again, you do not want to have blanks or special characters. I can't repeat that enough. Do not use blanks and special characters in databases. And that goes for any database, okay? GIS or otherwise, all right? Now, you can also change the data type. And so, you know, databases are very particular about the data type. And once you have set it up, you know, you basically can't change it, or you can't change it very easily. Now, this one is obviously, it's a date. So I'm just going to pick the date variable type, all right? And then we'll put another one in here. And this one we're going to call line underscore type. So this is the type of line. And for this one, we're going to make it a text field. And so now we've got two fields defined of two different types, okay? And so we're going to hit OK here. So the last thing I want to show you here is I want to show you about domains, which are very useful. you right click on you right click on the city data geodatabase again, and we got to go down here to properties. And you'll see this dialog box has very few tabs, but the one it does have is domains, right? So we want to create a domain for the waterline types. So I'm going to call it waterline types with no spaces, and the description of it, this is going to be the type of waterline to be, installed, right? Type of waterline installed. Okay. So that's the name of the domain. Then it wants to know what are your, what is your type, your field type, right? So it's a text field type. And then it wants to know, are you going to, use coded values? Yes, we are. And okay, so then we got to add our codes. In the first one, we're going to do M, and that is for a water main. And then we're going to have HL, and that is the code for hydrant lateral line. So this is a line from a main to a hydrant. And then a DL, this is for our domestic lateral. So this is for attaching a line from a main to a house or a property. Now, this can go on and on. You can have as many codes as you like in a domain. But this is very handy, okay? And it's handy because for a variety of reasons, right? So the first thing is that it saves data entry, right? So you can imagine if we have to put in hundreds of these things, if we had to type in main and hydrant lateral every time we added one, it would be very tedious, right? So now we're going to just be able to select them. And it also helps with consistency, right? And data checking. Because you can imagine if you were typing in hydrant lateral every time, I'd probably mistype or misspell half the time, right? So it's a good practice to use domains. All right, so I'm going to hit OK here. Now we got one more step here, right? Which is we got to right click on our water lines and go to the properties there. And what you're going to see here is we'll click on our line type, okay? And you can see here there's a blank spot for domain. So we have to select, and there now, because it's in the geodatabase, we can just select waterline types. And then it also wants to know, do you want to use a default value? And we're going to put in M for main. So every time we add a feature, it's going to be of the main type, right? And you can change that, of course, but that again saves you data entry. If most of your lines are going to be mains, then you can add them, right? Okay, so we've created now a geodatabase, and we've imported feature classes. We've made feature classes from scratch. You would do the same sort of thing if you're just bringing in a table of data or raster coverage, that sort of thing. All works pretty much the same. Another thing that's worth pointing out is that many of the tools in our toolbox, when they are processing things, then they want to create an output, right? And if it's an output you want to keep and use, I would direct it to put it into my geodatabase, right? And so it's a big filing cabinet for all of the things that you create. All right, so that wraps up building a geodatabase. And in the next lesson, we're going to talk about creating features. So we're going to use that waterline layer and this map in particular, and I'm going to show you how you can populate these feature classes that we've made that have nothing in them. So stay tuned.